I'm going to show how to create this sort of retro perspective grid using Affinity Photo's Procedural Texture Filter. This video is based on Ben Cloward's excellent video for Unity programming language, and I'll put a link to his video in the description for this video. To make this pattern, I'm going to create 3 different sets of lines. The vertical lines will be radiating out at an angle. The horizontal lines will be decreasing, and then there will be one more set that's not shown in this image. And this introduces 2 new functions, the clampmin and the clampmax, which I haven't shown before. So they can be used to control the coordinates a little bit. If you don't want your coordinate to be just going on forever using the same coordinates, you can block them off at a certain point and then put in a different coordinate. To get started, I'll start with a new document. I'll set it to 1024 by 1024 pixels and make sure it's in RGB mode. Create that and fill it with black, and then add a live procedural texture filter. I'm going to add a custom input of a real number, A, for my scaling factor, and I'll set that equal to 4. Then I'll add a single equation and assign it to all 3 channels for now. I'm going to start with a coordinate system. I'll call it variable v0 equals vec2, a 2-element vector of the relative x and relative y values, and times a divided by w. So since they're relative x and y, I could drag this around like that. Okay, now I'm going to create a second variable derived from this one, variable v equals vec2 of v0.x, and to create the perspective shape, I'm going to divide by v0.y. I'm going to divide by v0.y, and then for now I'll just put in a v0.y for my second coordinate. See what that looks like. So that gives me that shape right there. So now if I just look at an oscillator, a simple oscillator with this v.x, okay, you can see that it looks a little bit like perspective lines coming out from here. In fact, if I add a smooth step around this with an edge and an edge plus the smoothness factor, and then close that off, and then I need to add in a 0 to 1 range input for the edge, and another 0 to 1 range input for the smoothness factor. I can bring this down, and I have a series of lines. Now actually I want the opposite of that, so I'm going to use the 1 minus to make that lines. Okay, so there are my lines. Now if I turn off the red and blue channels, okay, I'm starting to get my pattern. Now I want to be able to adjust this a little bit, and so and it's sort of messy here, so I'm going to do some stuff to fix that up a little bit. I'm going to add a real input B and another one C. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the lines in the top half of this. In order to do that, I'm going to clamp my V0 value to have a minimum value. So I'm going to use the clampmin function, and it'll have a minimum value of, I'll use B because I'm going to figure that out later, but I'll just leave it at 0 for now. Okay, so that cuts off the top half of my graph here. The other thing I want to do is to be able to control the frequency of my oscillator, and so I'm just going to use my C variable for that, and I need to change that up. And so as I increase this, I'll get more lines showing up here. So So I'm going to call this one the clipping, I guess, and then I'll call this one frequency. And I guess it'll be frequency for the X parameter. Okay, now I need some horizontal lines on here, and they can just be regular horizontal lines. So to get started, I'll just do a copy of this smooth step, paste it here, and I'll just change it v.y, and I'm going to change this one to a d. And so I'll just put in another real value for d, and then I can make that. Now I would like this really doesn't change as it goes along, but the shape of these little rectangles change. So here they look like they're wide, and here they look like they're long and narrow. So I want to do something to fix that up a little bit. So I messed around with this for a while, and I found out that if I just take 1 over v0.y, that looks pretty good. So now it's still a little bit distorted, but I like this one better than the other way. I can add some more lines here. I'll just call this one frequency y. Now I'm going to clamp this one at min value as well, and I'll just use the same min value as the other one, which is b. It doesn't show up as anything here yet. I'm going to zoom way out, so I'm going to zoom out a lot, and I'm going to bring up my clipping value until I have some lines up there, and then I'm going to bring up my Y frequency until I have a lot more lines here. Let's see, they're flashing down as they're coming down at us. Okay. Yeah, until I have some lines that are like that. And so if I catch it, so the edge of the line is aligned with this edge, you'll see it sort of flashes like that. So I don't want it stuck on one of those, so I'll just go past that a little bit. So there are my lines. Now the last thing I want to do is I'm going to add some horizontal lines up here that are just at a constant frequency. So I'm going to copy this smooth step and paste it right here. So that'll be my third set of lines. And this time I'm going to look at just v0.y, like that. So that gives me lines all the way across. Now I want to clamp this, so I only have lines up here in this upper portion. So I'm going to do clamp max this time, and clamp this at a maximum value, and I'm going to do 10 times I, and so I will be a slider, and I'll put in a 0 to 1 slider for I. I'll just call this one wall lines clipping. That's where I'm going to clip off my wall lines. And another parentheses there. So now I can cut this off with this slider. So I can control the cutoff point for this with the slider. The last thing I'm going to do is, these look a little bit rectangular. I'd like to make them a little more square. So I'm going to adjust the frequency of this by putting in a ×2, and that just makes them look a little more square. So now I could zoom in on this, get closer to the wall, or move it farther away, like that. Or I could drag this up until you can't see the wall, which is how I had it in my previous example. And then you can also add more lines depending on how you want it to look. Okay, that's the example, and gives sort of a retro perspective grid feel to it. Let me know if you have any comments or questions, and thanks for watching.